The Truth About You and Me by Amanda Grace. I've got a lot to say about this book because it evoked a lot of different thoughts and feelings in me. For quite a few reasons. It reminded me of quite a few things, and I just, have quite a lot to say, so I have a feeling it's going to be a long video. Basically, the first thing I wanted to say is I do want to give props for Grace tackling such a sort of controversial subject. It's quite an interesting one to try. I haven't read many books on this subject area, and so I was quite intrigued before I even picked up the book. In case anyone doesn't know, I'm not going to give any more spoilers away than what's already on the blurb of the book. But in case anyone doesn't know, it's about a 16-year-old and her professor and their relationship, which is more than just a student-teacher relationship. So yeah, that's basically the premise of this. So I thought that's quite a controversial subject. It's still quite taboo, and there's not many books out there that I've read on similar subject areas. So I was very intrigued. That said, there was something about the writing style of this that I didn't really enjoy, despite the fact that I give her kudos for writing this sort of topic and tackling it. I didn't like the way she did tackle it, if that makes sense. The first thing is because I have a problem with first-person point of view. I don't tend to enjoy books that are written that way, purely because I feel like you get a very one-sided account, which, as you would expect in writing in that, and so I don't tend to enjoy books like it. Also, because the account was written by a 16-year-old girl, it felt very repetitive, as possibly it should be, but it felt very repetitive and cliched, and I didn't enjoy it, or some of the language used I just thought was a bit not necessarily appropriate for the situation it was describing. But then again, I suppose if you're writing as a 16-year-old girl about this situation, that's the kind of language and things you'd expect, and the structure you would expect. So it was probably written well in that sense, but I didn't actually enjoy reading it for the style. Secondly, because it really reminded me of fan fiction. I don't know if it's because of the 16-year-old girl writing element, because it certainly wasn't what you would stereotype as fan fiction, as it wasn't particularly smutty, or there wasn't a lot of sort of steamy sex scenes or anything like that. It wasn't like a 50 Shades of Grey type of thing. It was just actually, the only intimate moment in the book was very PG and things like that, so it's not that sort of book. But I don't know, it just felt very fan-fiction-y in its construct, and maybe it's the subject area, and that's one that's used quite a lot, the student-teacher kind of relationship, so maybe that's what reminded me of it, or I don't know, I felt like it was very fan-fiction-y, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I both write fan-fiction and read fan-fiction, so I obviously have a problem with fan-fiction, but I kind of feel like there's 3 tiers of fan-fiction, and there's like bad fanfiction for different reasons, either because of plot, bad representation, or either characters or the world they're trying to present, or just the actual construct of the fanfiction. There's like good fanfiction, which is, it's still good but very obvious it's been written by a fan, and then there is like superb fanfiction, which is sort of in the minute percentages, but the people that are writing it you genuinely believe should be writing books. They're that good in everything they do about the whole piece. And so I'm not putting myself in any of the categories. I will read all sorts, and I probably write all sorts as well, but that's not the point. The point I was trying to make is it was coming across as kind of good fan fiction, so enjoyable to read, but maybe not at a level I was expecting when reading a book. But again, I don't know if that's got something to do with the 16-year-old point of view storytelling technique. So maybe it was all intentional, but I just found it quite repetitive and cliched when reading it. So the next thing I wanted to say is, maybe it's a cultural thing, or maybe I'm very open-minded, or maybe there's just a whole plethora of reasons, but I struggled to see how the relationship presented was taboo. Now that's going to come across as quite weird. I think a lot of people are going to judge me for that, but I'm going to explain anyway. Firstly, I think it's because the age of consent in the UK is 16, kind of universally accepted. That's just like, and it's also known. So I've always grown up knowing that that was the age of consent. So the fact that she was 16 didn't, even though slightly weird with the age gap, it didn't sort of throw a massive thing into my head. I've always had this thing where I don't actually think an age gap in a relationship is a big deal as long as the 2 people don't notice it. That's just the way I kind of view things. I kind of view that with all relationship things. I think as long as the 2 people in the relationship don't care, or however many people are in the relationship don't care, then it doesn't really matter. So even though the age gap was big, neither of them had a problem with it or seemed to have a problem with it. So that was not a big thing to me. And the fact, as she was 16 and that's like the legal age, I didn't have a problem with it. And secondly, it was not her teacher but her professor, because in the way the story is told, she's already at university, she's sort of gone ahead a couple of years, and therefore he's like a university professor and not a teacher, and to me that's a very different kind of dynamic. I kind of associate a teacher as someone who's almost like a secondary guardian and is there partly just to babysit and guide and take care of their pupils, not just teach them. Whereas when you get to university, it's very, very different, and you might like have a one-off lecture from someone. You won't get lecture by people that teach your course, and it's a very sort of, it was a completely different dynamic, and especially if they're really young lecturers, I don't know, the age gap seems quite small, and there isn't a lot. I don't know, maybe it's just me and I'm quite open-minded in that sense, but I don't see a lecturer-student relationship as a taboo thing, whereas obviously a teacher-student relationship is a taboo thing. So that kind of threw spanner in the works. I always understand she moved ahead a few years into university in the story, and so technically she's not 18, 19 where she should be at uni, but 16. But then again, in my head I kind of reason that as if people think she's old enough to be attending uni and making those sort of decisions about her life, then that's no different to me than who she wants to be in a relationship with, kind of thing. I think if the government and the world is willing to accept you as an adult in every other aspect of your life, then that is also a part of your life that kind of needs to be accepted in. I'm no way sort of condoning dysfunctional relationships or relationships where it's kind of, there's a lot of abuse of the power. But from the way, maybe it's because it's from her point of view, so that's just what makes me think this way, but from the way it's written, one, he's completely in the dark about her age. He thinks that she's a normal university student age, which is still a reasonable age gap, but it's not huge. It's about 5-6 years, I think, which even though it's quite big, if you think about it in later terms, 5-6 years is not a lot in age gap. I think my parents have a 5-year age gap, so it's not like a big thing when you're older. So I don't know, so he's kind of in the dark about that. And then it's not like an abusive power thing. I don't see it. It's not like they're ever in a classroom with each other and things. They're very sort of away from the university when they go out, and I don't know, maybe it's just, as I said, the way it's presented, the way it's told, but I really struggled to see what was wrong with their relationship the whole way through. The biggest thing I had wrong with their relationship was how much she lied to him and led him into this false sense of security and understanding, and that what he consented to, he didn't actually consent to with all the information, and therefore he was putting a lot more on the line because he could have got in trouble, and she was withholding information from him. And therefore, if anything, I thought she was in the wrong because he was consenting to stuff that he wasn't really consenting to. That kind of makes sense. I don't know if I've put forward that in the most eloquent of ways, but that's kind of what I thought about it. And so, in some ways, I was quite disappointed with it because I felt like she could have gone a lot more headfirst into the subjects and actually tackled. I understand this is an American book, so 16 is not like the consent, like the age of consent across the board. Some places it's 16, some places it's 18. Like this book states that in Washington it's 16. So where they are, even though for a student-teacher relationship it's 18, it's kind of all the consent things are in here. But it's explored. But like, so maybe that has an element of it, so maybe the age thing would have been a bit less of a deal. She was still in high school, as it's an open book, but I kind of just feel like she could have been more daring with it, and I would have actually been intrigued to read a book about the relationship between a teacher and a student and seeing the relationships dynamic of that, because that's a lot more taboo and sort of skirting around the edges and a lot more brave decision. This, I kind of feel like she's attempted it quite half-heartedly, in the sense that it's not really that taboo, and she kind of tackles that everything's actually legal and consenting, especially from the girl's point of view, so nothing is done about it that's particularly creepy or anything. And so I don't know, I struggled slightly with the points it was trying to make. I don't think I was as shocked by some of the things or not. I don't know if that's a reflection of me and not the book, but yeah, I wasn't that impressed. Overall, I would give this book a 6 out of 10. I'd give it a 6 out of 10. But I'd give her a few points for at least attempting to tackle the subject, even if I don't feel she did it wholeheartedly. And I'd also I did enjoy reading it while reading it, despite all the problems I've stated with it. Like, as I said, it was like written like good fan fiction, but I still enjoy reading fan fiction, so it wasn't an unenjoyable read, and it was a pleasant story. I mean, there's nothing about it that really grabbed me and is going to make me remember it, which I think like a good book, especially a book on this subject area, should do. Like, I should be really left pondering and questioning sort of what's going on, and sort of being on someone's side and then questioning myself for it and things like that. I just don't feel like I did this. I felt like it was quite clear cut that he wasn't in the wrong. But then again, maybe it was a great book because it made me think that way, and someone else like disagrees. So if anyone else has read this book, leave in the comments what they thought, because maybe it was actually a fantastic book and I just felt very firm on one side, and someone else might completely disagree with me, and therefore it will show that this book is better than I thought it was. But I just wasn't that impressed. So I think a 6 out of 10 is fair. Okay, I will see you soon. Bye.